Usually, when we talk about the Annunciation, the focus is on Mary, and that's as it should be. But since today is Father's Day, our first scripture today from the book of Matthew was all about Joseph and his experience. So I'm going to ask us all to do something for the next minute. It's going to be hard because all of the stories that we have about the birth and life of Jesus are just so ingrained in us. But let's forget everything that we know about Mary and Joseph. Forget what we know about Jesus, and let's pretend there was no mention of an archangel in that scripture. Matthew chapter 1, verses 18 to 25 is a story about a guy finding out that his wife is pregnant. They're both very young. They're newlyweds. Maybe there's gossip in the community about the timing of their pregnancy. And maybe the part of Joseph that is just a young man is like, I don't need this. This is not how I thought the first few months of my marriage would go. And Joseph does have some options. That scripture says, because Joseph was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose Mary to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. There's no DNA testing then, so whether he's the father or not, he has a way out and Mary doesn't. If he chooses to divorce her, she has to care for this kid and carry this social stigma. Joseph doesn't have to do that. So what does he do? The last passage tells us when Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded, and he took Mary home as his wife. And it's important for us to remember that we have free will. Joseph had free will. And even if an angel of the Lord appears to you and tells you to do something, that doesn't mean you have to do it necessarily. So I think I want to give Joseph the credit that he deserves here for not taking an easy way out. His new family may or may not have been a family of biology. We will never know. But he chose them. And this is not our only biblical example of what a family is or what a family can be. We also have Naomi and Ruth. Naomi and her husband moved from Bethlehem to Moab. Their two sons married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. And then later, Naomi's husband and sons died, and Naomi decides to return to Bethlehem. And she tells Orpah and Ruth to return to their families and stay in Moab. And that's what leads us up to our second scripture reading today. And Naomi tells them, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." And Orpah does decide to return to her family, but Ruth wants to stay with Naomi. And sometimes Orpah gets a lot of grief for her decision because we, just reading this story, kind of force this dichotomy on this two women, like stay or go, right decision, wrong decision. Be loyal to a mother-in-law who kept you in her house, or turn away from her. But we miss a lot when we stick with this interpretation. We miss that Ruth chapter 1 is about three women having to make some really hard choices around family in the midst of this really big grief. We miss the love that Naomi has for her daughters-in-law, because when she tells them to leave, she's not saying like, finally, get out of my house. She's saying, go live your life. I would rather you find happiness and stability and move on from my sons than stick around here with me. And we might miss that none of them really made a wrong choice. Naomi chooses to go back to Bethlehem. Being in Moab is the life that she wanted for her sons, but they're gone. And Orpah protests a little bit at first, but she ultimately does listen to Naomi and goes back to her family. We don't really know anything about her past, so we can't know for sure who or what she was really going back to. But maybe she's just a young woman who missed her family, missed her parents, missed her siblings. Maybe she did really want to be a wife and a mother, and she's taking Naomi's advice to go home and try again. And so it's Ruth who gets all the credit in this story for staying with Naomi, but even in the celebrating of Ruth's decision, we miss some nuance. Some queer theologians think that there may have been a romantic connection between Ruth and Naomi, and whether or not that's true, Ruth does tell Naomi, I'm with you until one of us dies, with you till the end. She's showing this extraordinary level of commitment to a person who is not her husband, not her spouse. And so at the very least, what we are seeing is an expression of platonic partnership and commitment. And Ruth eventually does remarry and has a son, and that doesn't necessarily rule out the queer theory, because she then uses the financial stability of marriage to take care of Naomi, and Naomi cares for her son. In our white Christian nationalist society, we are bombarded with messages of what family is supposed to look like. And in fact, this year, several states have passed resolutions declaring June Nuclear Family Month instead of Pride Month. And I talked about Joseph first today, partly because it's Father's Day, but also because I don't want the takeaway today to be that traditional family structure is somehow bad. Of course it's not. I hope that the takeaway is that no family or community built by consenting or loving adults is inherently bad. Family can be biological or not. Family is all of these examples that we talked about today. Family is a mom and a dad and a son. Family is a wife and mother trying to help her daughters-in-law move on after an immense loss. Family is going home to your parents to start over. Family is two women always finding a way to stay together. So this brings us to our activity today. I hope that all of you got the e-blast, and if you chose to participate, brought some kind of memento or photo of somebody who was really formative for you or for your family. And I'm going to ask you at this time to come up and place it on the communion table. If you didn't bring something, that is okay. You're welcome to come up and write a name or a couple names on an index card. If you're on Zoom, you are welcome to put names and maybe a quick story or like a photo in the chat, and I'll make sure that those are captured and put on the communion table after service today. And what we will do is, as soon as worship is over, if you want to, and only if you want to, come and gather at the front by the communion table, and we'll do a show and tell, and we'll talk about who these people are to us.